Welcome to Grow Fast, Grow Smart, the PI Playbook by Xcelerator, the podcast exclusively designed to help personal injury law firms reach their full potential and serve their clients better. Today's episode is hosted by Micki Love, president of CJ Advertising and co-founder of Xcelerator Law Firm Consultants.
Hey friends, Micki Love coming to you today with another awesome guest who's going to talk to us about some ways to streamline our law firms to help us be more efficient and help our clients get the maximum recoveries for their cases in the least amount of time possible. So please join me in welcoming Jim.Andrews with Precedent. Jim, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Micki. It's great to be here. Great to see you virtually again, and haven't seen you since Chicago, so it's nice to see you.
It is that time of year where we're all on the conference circuit, but I had a good opportunity to speak with you about some of the really awesome stuff your group is doing, and you've got that magical keyword right behind you that every law firm is talking about these days, and really all the country is talking about in many different ways, but AI. And I know you guys are incorporating AI into your product quite a bit. Can you talk to my listeners and viewers about what it is that Precedent does, and maybe how you guys are using AI inside of the technology that you guys do and how that helps the law firms?
Yeah, I definitely can do that. I'm going to start by answering what does Precedent do, and then I'll get into more detail around the technology. So at the highest level, we want people to understand that we're a neutral third party that sits between plaintiff firms and insurance carriers with, the ultimate goal of facilitating a more modern interaction between the way that all of those exchanges work, because there's a lot of points in the process that firms are engaging with carriers. So many clients come through the door, they haven't even called their insurance carrier yet. So the firm takes on that responsibility of setting up the claim and doing that on behalf of their client. That's a time-consuming, pretty low-value task, but they have to do it. And I think especially firms that want to offer great service and differentiate from competitors, that they want to say, "Hey, Micki, we're here for you. From here on out, we're the ones dealing with the insurance carrier. Part of the reason you came to us is you were afraid to, you've already had a bad experience. You don't want to deal with that insurance carrier." The next kind of step in that process that we facilitate is the confirmation that insurance coverage exists. And what's been very surprising to me to learn is that approximately 30% of the people that get into an accident, or that are the cause of the accident, even if they give you their insurance card, it doesn't mean that they have insurance. So we're finding through engaging on behalf of the law firms that we're able to more quickly facilitate finding out, is there actually coverage here? Because if there's not, then we need to go to my client's insurance and use that uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist coverage and pursue something that way. We also, in the states where it is required, will do that policy limits discovery and do, I guess really should have started with all of these things much more quickly than you can do kind of through your traditional mechanism, or just calling the insurance carrier and waiting on hold. And the final component, at least today, of our platform is the ability to draft demands very easily. And so what we do is simply require, give us the supports. We will take those supports and in as little as 4 hours, but a maximum of 24, provide back a demand to that plaintiff's firm for them to review. There's a lot of additional functionality that we support. So everything from less exciting stuff like redaction or moving documents around, or, oh, that document doesn't need to be there, let me delete it, to kind of the new fancy stuff, right? Being able to generate a narrative on the specific loss of facts, being able to generate the injury narrative, being able to extract all of the medical records and actually create an aggregate view. And what we're seeing specifically with some of that extracted data from more of the kind of forward-thinking law firms is understanding, can I use that data to then inform decisions in the future about future cases, because now if I've got really granular detail, I can crunch through it and understand. And on the other side of it, sort of what are we doing with AI? And when you said there's a word behind me, I thought you were going to say precedent, which is every lawyer's favorite word. But of course, having AI and being practical with it and using it not for fancy things that might be more far-flung, but for very specific uses. So when we think about what we do with AI, it's not just the ability to extract this data or to generate a narrative or to sort of re-inform future narratives to build off of things that you've potentially previously put into your demands. But it's also, what our head of data science would say is that we're most proud of the traceability of our technology. And what that means is that we cite our sources. You're never going to have a hallucination where there's made up case law or there's injuries that weren't actually in the data. Everything that we do, there is a way to reference back, where did this come from, so that I have certainty. And to take a step back to when I was speaking about narratives, one of the other things that we do to give our clients flexibility is that we don't necessarily say, we'll write the narrative for you, or that our AI will write the narrative for you. You can have you do it all yourself. You can have a precedent starts that process, gives you a baseline, and then you have your attorneys or case managers complete it. Or we have the sort of, we'll get you 99% of the way there, and then you can review that and have that certainty and obviously put sort of the chef's kiss, so to speak, onto your narrative. So I know I went long there. I apologize for not giving you some breaks to ask more
No, I
questions.
love it. I love all the things you were just talking about. You've hit on some of the most time-consuming aspects of the legal assistant, case management type positions that are in the law firms today. Some of the things that the case managers struggle with the most because it's so time-consuming. If you think about opening a claim and just sitting on the phone for hours waiting to get the insurance company all the information that they need so that the claim can be properly set up, and you guys are taking that off of the law firm's plate and transferring it somewhere else, the time that frees up for the case manager alone so that they can focus on speaking to the client, learning more about their injuries, helping to develop those specific requirements for the case to really grow is mind-boggling. Like that's amazing, because that is one of the pieces that we hear from firms across the country when we go in to do any consulting work with them, is that my team says they spend hours setting up claims. And I can tell you, having done that before, it is absolutely true. Like, it's one of those jobs that is an absolute must, but it's time consuming. So kudos to you guys for coming up with a solution for that, because that is awesome. How easy
Well,
is
and
that?
can I interject two anecdotes on that point,
Absolutely.
Micki?
Yes. Come
Because
on.
you
Tell me
really
more.
so the two things. Number one, we just heard from a firm yesterday this almost immediately signed up with us because the gentleman we were talking to said, I can't tell you how many times I walk around the office and someone's holding the phone or they have the headset on, but they're not talking. And I say to them, what are you doing? And they say, well, I'm waiting on hold with the insurance company. Right. So he could not wait to start working with us because they're doing, roughly 100 to 150 signups a month, saying that's all time that my people get back to do exactly what you said, which is to focus on the clients, focus on the details of the case, and not do things that are, pretty tedious and frankly, probably ultimately may result in losing talent that feels like, am I doing the best with my life if I'm calling an insurance carrier to set up a claim, or do I enjoy more the opportunity to really help someone that's in need by being their advocate? So sorry to interrupt you.
No, absolutely. Like, that is one of my favorite things that you guys are offering as a service, because I do think that, you know, if a lawyer who owns a firm goes and peels back all of the steps and the processes that their legal assistants do, and which ones are making them money versus which ones are costing the firm money, this is one of those steps that isn't necessary, but it costs the firm money. There's nothing to uh, gain from increasing the value of the case by simply setting up the claim, other than we have to have a claim. So I love that piece. And I think I heard you say that you guys are also looking for policy amounts. Did I understand that correct?
So yes, in the states where there are disclosure states, so there's a duty to disclose by the insurance carrier, we are both working directly with some carriers. We've been very purposeful to start with the top of the market. Most attorneys would probably know, just based on what comes through the door, that the top 10 carriers represent about 80% of the volume in at least in personal auto and motorcycle, those things. It's a little bit more fragmented in commercial lines, but still pretty concentrated. So we've been conscious to work with those carriers to say, you have to supply this information, you have to do it in a certain time, and if you don't do it, there's a negative consequence for you. The firms are, there's a bubble from I don't know if you saw that. The firms are supposed to provide that information. I'm sorry, the firms need that information. The carriers are supposed to provide it. We said, there's got to be a better way, because based on what we've had conversations and even some early tests that we did, it's taking between 6 and 8 phone calls in Florida to get the policy limits. You're required to disclose them. Neither party wants to make those phone calls or receive those phone calls, but the plaintiffs' firms need that information and the carriers need to disclose it. So thinking through what are better ways to have that exchange. And for us, really trying to take this entire industry from, I love it that it's 2024, because it can say 30 years ago, in 1994, how much different is it the way that plaintiff firms and insurance carriers are interacting? They're still calling each other. They're still sending faxes. They're still physically mailing lots of things. And oftentimes the most advanced mechanism for communication is an email that gets missed or doesn't get responded to. And part of what we're doing is really trying to create standardization and consistency in that process and do it in a digital way.
Yeah, I love that. It's crazy to think about how much snail mail still happens in the legal industry today compared to a lot of other industries. So I love the fact that you guys are finding solutions and being creative for law firms in this way. The other thing that I think is important at firms is, we have a non-negotiable that we have to know our policy limits, especially on the UM/UIM policy side, since that's our own client's insurance. Are you guys setting up the claim for both the liability and the UM/UIM carriers, or how does that work with Precedent?
Yes, that's exactly how it works. So what we would do is understand who the first party coverage is with, as well as the third party coverage, and obviously wanting to have a police report and all those things to, every time, and sometimes this is lost, is the more information that you provide to that insurance carrier that is a part of their process helps facilitate things happening more quickly. Because for as big as some of the biggest law firms are in the US, they just don't match the scale of the State Farms and Progressives and Geicos. So and I think that anybody that runs a business could understand that the bigger you get, the more standardization and consistency and process you have to have. And as soon as you start to break away from that process, you have other challenges. And so for the carriers, there's a lot of essentially checkbox processes of, okay, I want to set up this claim. Well, do I have the police report? You can still set up a claim without it, but that claim's going to get moved along more quickly if you do. And it sort of continues through that path. And one of the places that it's really relevant is in that demand composition. And also we do the delivery of that demand to the carrier. So as a part of our drafting of that demand, we're actually going to do a quality check and say, do you have all of the right documents here for Micki Love's case? Do you have the MRI results and the medical bills, the chiropractor, all of that stuff that should be included as a part of that? And we see roughly 11% of the time that something's missing, or we even see completely the wrong bills. And someone with a name like Jim.Andrews, I can understand that it would be a little bit, easy to grab the wrong Jim.Andrews or John Smith. But making sure that it's the right persons, because think about the delay that causes. I sent an incomplete or inaccurate support data for my demand. The carrier has a process. They don't look at the demand till the 24th day, let's say. On day 25, you get an email or a phone call back that says, not everything is here, resubmit. Okay, well, now that process starts all over again. You resubmit, maybe they get to it slightly faster. It's 2 more weeks. Now you've got maybe the opportunity to get your first offer or get into some form of an active negotiation. But in the absence of that quality, you're going to create an obstacle for yourself. And I think that's what most of us are looking to avoid in life is unforced errors, right?
Yes.
And then the thing that I touched on, but I'll speak to is, again, to Precedent being this intermediary that sits between, is that we've worked with the carriers to say, set up a dedicated transmission mechanism for us to send the demands. You'll know that everything that you're getting from us through this is a demand. And if firms want to get paid more quickly, working through us, the carriers can not only know they're getting that demand, but feed it into their process, their various document extraction, data extraction models that then feed into their injury evaluation tools, that then give them an understanding of what's the settlement range that's reasonable and start that negotiation. Right now, I understand that we have differing opinions about what's reasonable, but it's really, from our perspective, the 2 goals are getting that negotiation started or getting that first offer faster to the firm. And at the end of the day, if we think about Precedent's mission statement as a company, it's really about helping injured parties get back to their lives as quickly as possible. And obviously the attorneys are there as advocates for them in that mission. And we, like to think of ourselves as sort of the Robin to their Batman in helping along with that.
I love that. You said something there about, getting the clients back on their feet as fast as possible after an accident. I think one of the other things that we as a law firm are responsible for is getting them maximum recovery. And part of that, in my opinion, is making sure we understand the medicals frontwards and backwards. And I think I heard you say that you guys recognize if we're missing some medicals or if we've got the wrong medicals in there. That's a pretty impressive piece of the puzzle that is often missed when handled internally by the law firm, because the case managers have so many things on their plate and they're working on medical records. The phone rings, they've got to talk to a client, they get back to the medical records, they forgot what they saw. And so they either have to start over or they just keep going and we've missed a big chunk of something that was super important. So talk to me a little bit about, are you guys integrating with any CRMs at the moment, or you have plans to integrate in the future? What does that look like? Because I know medical records are coming in constantly. And so how does that work with Precedent? Are we feeding it to you guys all at the end or along the path of the case? Like, how does that work?
I couldn't have paid you to ask me a better question here, Micki. And I want the whole audience to know that I did not give this to her as a softball to throw to me. So we're definitely working to integrate, and particularly with what we would describe as probably 4 of the 5 largest. I'm not sure I'm allowed to name names, but I'll name some conferences we're attending at the end of this podcast, and people can put 2 and 2 together on that. But the integration piece to us is extremely important. And one of the reasons is, if you think about what you described, are they adding those bills as they come in? And we think about the concept of a living demand and streaming the medical documents. And one of the features that we offer, or I should say will be offering soon, is the ability to inform a firm, when is this demand ready to be sent? Because a lot of firms are waiting, the client's going through treatment, doing treatment through the end of November, so we'll send the demand in early November. Well, we can tell you based on our sort of internal predictive models, when is the demand sufficient to drive the optimal outcome for the client. And it may not be after the treatment's completed. It might be earlier because there's enough support for what that ultimate demand is going to be. And if specific, especially if we know the policy limits, we know how much has been billed, and there's only 3 PT treatments left, but it's one every 2 weeks for the next 6 weeks. Well, now you're waiting 6 weeks for something that you didn't need to wait for, because our models tells us there's an extraordinarily high likelihood that you're going to have the same result if you send it today than if you waited 6 more weeks to do that. And so that concept of streaming the medicals of that living demand is something that we've incorporated into our product.
You're speaking my language, Jim. I love watching the demand process, and when the case value meets the requirements or the ability to demand the policy limits, like send it then. You don't have to wait until that client is completely finished with treatment. If we know policy limits, we know what the meds are, we know how severely our client was injured and their life was impacted because of this particular rule of the road that the defendant has broke, like let's get that demand out as quick as we can. Our clients deserve that. And so the things that you're bringing to the table are really speaking my love language around law firms. Like, how do we maximize recovery for our clients in as little amount of time as possible? Because that's what our clients truly deserve. And I'm just excited to hear that you guys are offering that a way
So
for
just
firms to identify that.
specifically, some data that we identified with a pretty large national firm was that their average demand was being sent out at like day 123. But as we looked through all of their data, the bills for all of those individual cases, we said, on average, you probably could have sent these at day 78. So the difference between 123 and 78 is extraordinarily meaningful to the client. It's obviously nice to have that come through the door for the firm. And one of the things that is really interesting to me in working with firms and insurance carriers is there is a mutual goal to resolve things more quickly. And because it's obviously there's a lot of friction in that relationship, but there's a need, insurance carriers will tell you a claim is like a fish. The older it gets, the more it stings. And I think what I've learned from working with now so many plaintiff firms is that you don't necessarily want the case to drag out because nothing's going to change. And in fact, most of those people that their cases drag on, it's because they're not going to treatment. They're not doing the things that they need to do to recover from their injuries. And those become old fish, right? So what can we do to help push things through the process and get things settled more quickly?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on many of those points. Chad and I spend a lot of time working with law firms around the country talking about how do we maximize the value of this case for the client. And one of the top things we always teach when doing so is client communication. You have to be talking to your client to know if they're treating, when they're treating, where they're treating. And if you're doing those things, then you'll be able to get to a great resolution for your client as soon as the time is ready. And so utilizing a product like yours could really free up the case management team and the attorney team to spend more time on the phone with the client, utilizing their skill sets in working up cases, talking about their medical history, learning about their current injuries, how the case impacted their life. And all of those things are going to increase your average fee, which is one of my passions for law firms because it does two things. One, it raises the level of profitability of our law firms, but more importantly, it raises the amount of money you can put into your client's pocket, which then leads to referrals, which then leads to more growth, which then doubles the size of the law firms pretty easily so they can continue to employ great people to do great things for more of their community. And so for me, I think the things that you guys are offering is really going to take away some of those legwork pieces that are not necessarily driving better values on those cases, but yet allowing for the cases to mature as quick as they can, but yet at a full maturity level to ensure that we know what's wrong with our clients. If we're missing a test, a medical test or a medical record, that could help us prove those values. So kudos to you guys for doing all those things. One other thing you said was that you guys annotate so that we can find all the things that you have pulled out. And I was curious if you guys are doing that with medical records as well. So if you're summarizing the meds, do I have a quick way of being able to click a link and be able to get to a particular medical record that speaks to a particular injury?
A side by side, on one side is here's what Precedent extracted. On the other side is the support, so all of that underlying documentation, it could be a $6 charge. Click that charge, it jumps to where that is in the medical bills for the reference of whomever at the firm needs to see that. So all of that data is both extracted and available for kind of downstream, if you want to call it, analytics purposes, but also, as probably more importantly, short term, is case manager can have that confidence to have that referenceability, or cite the source, as our data science team would say. Nobody likes the scary thing about AI is the black box mentality or thought process of, well, I send it somewhere and some magic happens and then I get it back and I'm just supposed to run with it, right? So being able to say, yes, we created this for you, here's everything that you need, but we're going to essentially call ourselves out with the ability to cross-reference where did this all come from. And so you have that high confidence that you're putting together a high quality demand that has an accurate representation of what's in the supports, that ultimately, not only gets the client to an outcome that they're excited about, but also does it more quickly.
One of the other questions I had for your demand writing process and product that you offer, if a law firm client brings the demand in, they make some edits and they send it back to you guys, do you guys learn from that and start to adjust to the way the firm wants future demands to be written? If they need certain ending paragraphs, if they want a certain opening paragraph, can you talk to me a little bit about customization about the demand? And do you offer that, or is it a standard Precedent form and that's the only way to go?
So one of the ways that we think that we're also differentiated in the market is the flexibility, the customized approach that we take. So if you're in Louisiana and you've got 5 different templates for 5 different offices, or you have this type of template for a high limit case or low limit case, or the severity of the injuries, however you slice it, we can support all of those templates. But if you're a smaller firm that slaps your logo on a Word document and that's good enough for you too, we actually have a really nice out of the box template that we do customize, of course, with the firm's information. So we have that template level customization, but we also have what you sort of reference as the ability to say, maybe you always have the same opening paragraph. Maybe this template has this specific opening paragraph and this one doesn't. And then as far as learning from what, maybe either historically you've written or what you start to process through us, that's something that's at the discretion of the firm. We certainly don't do anything to cross-pollinate between firms. So, in an isolated environment, if you said, I want to spend the next 6 months, we're going to send you our demands to be processed. We're going to start with your narrative generation, but then edit it from there. And we want you to learn from that. And after 500 demands, let's see, how close what Precedent would produce matches to what a case manager would produce. So certainly a lot of flexibility in that area as well.
That's wonderful. I do think that these are some really great things and tools that law firms can utilize to help them improve their average fees as well as improve efficiencies for their clients. Jim, if someone wants to get in touch with you to talk to you more about what Precedent does, how they can utilize it in their firm, to see a demo, how can they find you?
They could go to precedent.com, www.precedent.com. Very happy that we own that domain. And a lot of attorneys love that we have that name. They can email me directly, Jim.Andrews at Precedent.com. So call back to me having a generic name. At least it's easy to remember. And we will be at a number of conferences throughout the rest of the fall. So we'll be at Clio Cloud Conference. We will be at the Smart Advocate Connect Conference. We will be at LitiQuest. And we'll also be at a number of the National Trial Lawyers events and Law de Gras, which I think is separate, but also run by them. So there's not a lot of conferences from now until December in the plaintiff's firm or in that space that we're not going to be attending. So see us there.
Earlier, and you were just listening now, you can kind of surmise which CRMs that Precedent might work for. I will be speaking at the Smart Advocate Conference, which is a great CRM for personal injury firms and many different firms of different types to utilize. But look forward to seeing you and your team at the Smart Advocate Connect Conference, because I think it's going to be a great agenda with a lot of impactful information for law firms to learn from as well. Before I let you go, Jim, is there a book that you have read that you would like to recommend to our readers to hear about?
So one of the things that, I struggle with talking about business books and specifically sales books. I don't want to come across as, just hyper-focused on sales, but one of the best books that I've read recently is called The Jolt Effect. And it's the same folks that wrote The Challenger Sale, but it's really focused on what do I need to do to make my prospective future partner, we'll call it, the buyer, comfortable with what they're doing, that they're making the right decision, de-risking that for them to feel confident. I think specifically for attorneys, and I didn't bring this up yet, but I'm the youngest of three boys. My middle brother is a plaintiff's attorney in Seattle. Shout out Nick.Andrews. I love you, bud. I think he would say that his best attribute is making clients feel like he's really there to advocate for them, that he's there to support them. I mean, I know based on his phone never stopping ringing that clients feel like he's someone that they can get a hold of, that he's always going to have time for them. And so having that ability to connect with the client and make them feel like you have their needs in mind, and kind of taking it back to the Jolt Effect, it's making whomever that prospective buyer is feel like this isn't a risk for them. This is the least risky thing they can do is work with Precedent to make their firm better, or work with you as the plaintiff's attorney to get them to the outcome that they want. And there's a lot of choice out there, both for legal vendors and for attorneys. And so what can you do to make that someone who's in dire straits or a position of probably the most uncomfortable that they've been in their life, or uncertainty, that you're there for them. So The Jolt Effect, I think, is a great book that helps understand sort of a little bit more of the behavioral aspect of sales, and not just the metrics behind it and how to track things, and really getting into the psychology of the person that you're interacting with.
Well, I'm definitely going to add that to my reading list. I do believe that we are all in the business of sales, regardless of what our role is, but especially as a law firm owner, like, you want clients. And so what is it that you can do that's going to give that client the ultimate jolt effect, if you will, to hire your firm and then to refer other people to your firm in the future? And it sounds like Precedent may be one of those pieces that can set your firm up to make your client have a really great experience, which would just give you that jolt effect for more referrals in the future, which would lead to more revenue, which would lead to more opportunities for your team and for your families. And so with that, I'm going to leave you today. My name is Micki Love, and for the love of PI, we'll see you soon, friends.
Thank you so much, Micki.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of Grow Fast, Grow Smart. the PI Playbook by Xcelerator. Be sure to subscribe for more tips and tricks on growing your law firm the smart way.